welcome back to another edition of Inside the Ville. My name is Greg Norman, your host. We have a really good show this week. Brandon Superintendent, Dr. Matt Outlaw, will join us and talk a little bit about going back to school next week and all of that entails of making sure people and teachers are safe and the students are doing the things they're supposed to do to follow the rules of the pandemic. Hopefully that'll be an insightful conversation. That also comes on the heels today that Governor Whitmer said that probably we could go back to playing some sports, although it's kind of on the schools and the participants for contact sports. We'll get a little more information on that. And then Dave Phillips from Oakwood Community Church joins us to talk a little bit about the recovery program. If you have an issue or you need somebody to talk to on Monday nights at 7 o'clock out at Oakwood, they do a great job with a program out there that they've run for 5 years, and Dave will give us the insights of that. So hopefully everybody have some fun with this program. There's some good information, so stay tuned and have a fun Labor Day, and we'll get to it in a second. We're talking with Superintendent of Schools from Brandon, Dr. Matt Outlaw. Matt, we've talked to you about 6 weeks ago, and we talked a little bit about just the process, and I was wondering if you could maybe give us an update. School starts in, I think, September 8th, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And it's been, I'm sure, a tough summer. And number one, let me thank you first for, I know how busy you are right now with everything going on, so thanks you for taking the 10 minutes out.
No, this is great. It's our team has been working tirelessly. We've really taken this to the next level as a district. We've really been working hard throughout the summer to make sure that September 8th and beyond is great for our students and for our families. Early on, and I know I talked about it before, we really committed to having choices for our family. And we've really followed through on what we promised to our families. We have a Learn From Home program. We have about 35 to 40% of our families that have chosen to do a Learn From Home option virtually. And the rest of the folks are going to be coming to school in person. We have safety protocols all over the place. We've been following the state guidance as well as the Oakland County Health Department guidance. And we have worked to solve a lot of challenging restrictions that are there, and we're pretty close to being ready for our students on September 8th.
Masks mandatory inside?
They are. One area that we discussed, they was automatically, it's required by law 6 through 12, and our board, based on some feedback and a number of other things, we are requiring it from junior kindergarten through 12th grade.
Okay. I noticed on one of the national reports yesterday, they're actually making games for K-12 or K through second, third grade about wearing masks. They're actually coming up. The NEA is coming up with, making it fun to wear a mask, which is probably what you got to do with the kids.
Yeah, it's really tough. The mask piece is tough. As a parent of young children, I know how difficult the mask mandate really is. But the Oakland County Health Department has two main areas that they're focusing on. One is masks, and the other one has to do with distancing. Those are the two big areas. So we're listening to the medical experts, and I know it's an area that they think will help with the spread.
Of the 60 or 65% of kids that they're coming to school, number one, what's the protocol if somebody does get sick? And they're obviously going to have to report to you. When I say you, the school. So what is the protocol for, just so parents know if it turns out they have symptoms?
Sure. So one thing I want to mention is that Oakland County Health Department Division has, they received a grant from somebody in order to have nurses. So we have a nurse assigned to us from Oakland County Health that is guiding us on those.
Okay.
We have really strict guidelines that they have given us. Really what you're looking at is folks that are in close contact with people for a certain amount of time period. And what would happen if we receive notification that a student may or has come down with COVID-19, there's a set of protocols where there's quarantine, the health department does with contact tracing, and they notify folks that fall in that close contact category. And so it's a quarantine process. Quarantine for us means that a student would move into being schooled virtually. We don't want to have any downtime. We have a plan in place so that students don't miss education. But obviously there's a chance that a student could be in proximity with somebody who does have COVID-19.
I'm assuming that the plan you put in to bring kids back to school really encountered 100%, and obviously 35 or 40% are staying home. Is there a perfect formula as to what you would like to see, or would you like to see 100% back? Again, I understand everything being safe. Is there any process of thought there?
So really, this time period is so personal for families and for each individual that I think the perfect format is to give parents choice. And we also gave staff choice. You know, we had, I think about 45 of our staff members indicated an interest in teaching in our Learn from Home program. And so we've placed the majority of those people in that area. So staff had choice, families have choice. I think that's the perfect formula during this time period.
You're a professional educator, and there's been lots of conversation about the value of face-to-face contact with kids, just socialization. I get it, and I think everybody else gets it. Is the hype, and I don't know why I don't ask a medical question or even a political question, but is it 50-50, meaning that is life in terms of pandemic and dying, or what you might give it to, versus, I keep hearing this from both sides. Are both sides right that you've got to be able to socialize and at the same time be safe, or is one more than the other?
So, you know,
a tough question to answer.
I think even the smartest medical professionals in the country are still figuring this whole thing out.
Okay.
I think everybody's looking at this. But what we did as a district, what we thought was important, is that we looked at all risks for students when we made our plan, not just COVID-19. COVID-19 is one of a list of risks for students. When you come into things like mental health, depression, suicide, nutrition, just this list that could go on and on and on, and which you're referencing. American Pediatric Society has come out and really concerned about virtual schooling on a large scale across the country. So we took into account all risk factors, and COVID-19 is a risk just like all those other things are a risk. So that's how we're responding.
In a really tough professional world, do you think you're going to lose teachers as a profession across the board with this?
So I think that the stress right now on professionals just trying to make this happen is it's been pretty significant. So I'm worried as a whole, not as much maybe in Brandon, but on a whole, I think that we're losing people from this profession. I have heard many districts with mass retirements, people choosing to leave the profession. I have heard of people taking leaves. There was one district that had an extensive, so many teachers that went on leave that they had to shut the district down and go fully virtual. So yeah, I am concerned because we already had a teacher shortage in this nation, and it's just starting. We're going to have a teacher shortage for the next 5 to 10 years at least. So you add this to it. Of course, I'm concerned about retention of quality staff.
We're learning things about this though too, I think, at the same time. I know there's a lot of families that have gone together and they've hired they're doing virtual schooling, but they're hiring a sort of a part-time teacher to handle the 4 families from this neighborhood who live in a cul-de-sac, so that they have some interaction. They can. It's easier to social distance in a backyard necessarily than it might be in a classroom. So as we move through this, I think we're learning a lot of things. I think that's part of it. Plus, tell me if I'm wrong, you can't really treat the education model the same way across the country because of the regionalism that just exists with geography and weather and all the other things that go with it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that public schools will ever be the same. I think that for us as a district, we're having a lot of conversations trying to look 1 or 2 steps past this to see where we need to be in a few years. Like, for example, this Learn from Home model that we're doing is something that we think that will carry on beyond this pandemic. And with the amount of parent choice and flexibility, we had already been launching. So we've had virtual school for 9 years, but we were tweaking ours, and we were really focusing on 3 words: is anytime, any place, any pace, to give flexibility. So we're kind of doing that now. We think that will live on beyond this. Lots of changes are coming when it comes to how people are educated in America.
I've said this in more than one interview in a variety of subjects, is that there's been a profession or an industry that has changed, direction from last March. You're given this edict, and all of a sudden you got to turn around, and I'm not sure any industry could have turned around as fast. And I think teachers don't get the credit. Education doesn't get the credit for that, especially in this current, in this current model. And I think that's the point is that it's going to change. From a dollar perspective, if it cost you $1 million to run the school district, have you factored in what the extra cost might be for doing some of these things? Maybe people should know that.
So it is very costly to run an in-person option with all of the regulations that we have in place. We've been really careful with our dollars. We're using CARES Act dollars very wisely. We have applied for FEMA grant money in order to help us buy supplies and to help with some of those type of things. And then our district has kind of built up our rainy day fund, and it's raining right now. So we're spending a lot of resources right now in order to deliver in person. A lot of the districts that have gone virtually, they're going to end up saving some dollars because they don't have lights on and they're not doing all these things. But the importance of in-person schooling is worth the investment.
Is the cost, and I won't ask you for a specific dollar value, that's putting you on the spot, but is it single digit increase of operations, or is it double digit increase of operations?
I'll say it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that we have spent preparing for this year. Just in supplies alone, we're going to be easily $500,000. But those are coming from additional sources that have come from the federal government in particular, in the CARES Act, and then in FEMA.
I'm asking the question because sometimes I think there's those in the world that think if you just flip a switch and everything's fine, and it's just not the case. So if you put a dollar value to it and you put some sand under it just so somebody can see it, I think it makes a different argument so somebody can quantify it a little bit better. So that's the point.
And we've brought back some additional staffing to make sure that our class sizes are lower and things. Those are all added costs.
Do you have new positions within the district because of things that are? Have you manned up with maybe extra security or extra hall monitors? Have you done anything like that?
So we'll have some temporary staff that will be on to assist at the building level with just student management at each one of our different buildings. That'll be new. We've had security in the past. We're going to have that security back in place. Where we've invested has been in teachers in order to lower our class sizes down, to keep those class sizes so that we can have good distancing inside of our classrooms. That's been our number one investment in people, has been in the classroom.
Is there a penalty for not wearing a mask in school?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It is required.
It's not a choice.
Yeah, and I had that question before, and it's age-appropriate discipline. If a 5-year-old is not wearing a mask, it looks very different than an 18-year-old. An 18-year-old better knows the rules, and they have to follow. But there are a series of progressive steps that go along the way. At the lower ages, it's more about education, like you said before, playing games and doing different things to help kids get more used to it. But yeah, it's an expectation.
Your tennis team, your golf team, and your cross-country team are active. They still haven't made up their mind on both volleyball and soccer, football. Maybe this spring we're battling as coaches. I can tell you right now, we've been on the phone. I'm part of the Coaches Association for lacrosse, and we've been battling to make sure that lacrosse had a voice equal to football, so we didn't get shoved to playing, next August, our state championships. But
the
state, I think, from what I've talked to this morning, I think soccer and volleyball aren't too far around the corner from being. Does that normalize things a little bit?
Yeah, I'm a youth baseball coach, and honestly, once we went out on the field and we started playing for our kids and everybody, I think a lot of people, their anxiety went down quite a bit, and we're hoping that same thing will happen when we get back to classes. And once you get your feet on the ground and you're like, okay, it's different. Wearing a mask isn't fun, but you know what? I'm there. I'm in school. I'm learning, and so yeah, I think that sports getting out front definitely does help.
I've had to learn to adapt. I'm using an electronic whistle instead of using one with my mask. So I want to blow the whistle in a practice situation, and I have to keep finding my hand to push the button to make the whistle go off. So we're all learning.
Yes,
the other thing I was going to mention, you talk about youth baseball. We did, I think, 24, 27, something like that, of the T-ball Little League machine pitch games for our little television station. And our increase of viewership is almost up 200%. We typically get a couple of hundred people watching them, Grandpa and Grandma and those kinds of things. Yeah. We've got some Little League games that had as many as 600-700 viewers on YouTube, which I think is pretty astounding when you consider that, you're talking about second, third, and fourth graders.
That's fantastic.
Full staff is back then? Everything is in order?
Yep, we're back. We had right now we're just putting the final touches. We're 2 weeks away. We've got a couple vacancies, and that we're still trying to fill, and but we'll be there by September 8th.
Okay. I won't ask you what to anticipate because it changes. It could change tomorrow. So it's just one of those things. I will just thank you for your time. Is there anything we're missing that you want to tell parents?
No, I guess the only thing I would say is, we're taking this very seriously. As I mentioned before, we're looking at the whole child, and we're looking at all those different factors. We're listening to parents about some of their preferences, and we would just ask people to be patient with us. We're one of the few that are offering that in-person option, and in order to do that, we need a little bit of flexibility and patience on your side. We're dedicated to your kids, and we just think that those choices for families are so important. And so just appreciate all the feedback and patience from our parents.
Next time, and hopefully 3 or 4 weeks when we talk again, I'll bring back up the acceptance of what it's been like to get the kids back in the classroom. But I'll hold that question off until you've got some, real data, so that we can have that conversation. So certainly, I appreciate your time. Be safe, to say the least, along with your teachers. And again, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome back. We're talking with Dave Phillips, who is let me get this right, Dave. You are the ministry
leader.
Yeah,
I'm just a regular church member, and I happen to be in charge of leading this. So,
okay. While we're talking to Dave today is from Oakwood Community Church. The reason we're talking with Dave is that on Monday nights there is a Celebrate recovery program at 7 o'clock, and it kind of covers a lot of areas. It certainly covers alcoholics and drug addicts. And Dave, maybe just talk a little bit about the program.
Sure. It's for everybody, really, that's got any kind of hurt, hang-up, or habit. People think of recovery, they think of alcoholics and drugs, and basically that's about 25% of the people that come. And our format does follow the same format as AA, same 12 steps. But it's a Christian program, and incorporated with that are the 8 Beatitudes of Jesus. So people come for alcohol and drugs, and also any other hurts, hang-ups, or habits they might have. And boy, there's a smorgasbord of things that people deal with in life. Some are common and some are pretty rare, but the Beatitudes are a foundation, and the 12 steps are a foundation for recovery from those things.
How long has the program been running, and how long have you been involved?
We've had it at Oakwood for 5 years now, but it came into existence in 1991. And it's now at 30,000 churches around the world. Each church has their own place. They're responsible for their unit, but they have to follow the principles of the National Celebrate Recovery Group.
How many folks do you have on a Monday night usually?
Right now it's about 10. Last summer it was about 23. COVID had a little bit of effect, and things seem to go up and down a little bit. When I first got into it, I thought it would just start and grow, but I found that people come and they get healing, and they're kind of settled, and after a few months they might move off having relief from that, where other people stay and kind of help other people with their recovery.
The 12-step Alcoholic Anonymous program, I'm not sure there's a more effective program in the world that I know of. It helps lots of people, and basically it's one of those things that sometimes it's just having somebody to talk to helps, which is kind of what your program is about. That's right?
Yeah, it is. There's 2 sections to our program, and one of them is to do with everything you're talking about. In the first section, since it's a Christian-based thing, we do have a couple of worship songs in the beginning. And people don't have to be believers to come. It's just our format. And then after that, we either have a testimony, and a testimony is something that gives people a lot of hope. Well, it worked for that person, could work for me. Or we alternately, every other week, we have a lesson. And the lesson kind of gives them a little bit of tools to work towards their recovery. And then after that, we break off into men in one section, ladies in another section. And there we have open share. And that's kind of where the healing comes, by sharing what you're struggling with. And it's strictly confidential. Everybody is, there's no talking. It's anonymous and strictly confidential.
How did you get involved with the program at church?
Kind of a sideways way. 2011, I think it was, a friend of mine called me, and he and two other buddies and I went and knocked on another friend's door. This friend was an alcoholic, but Kent couldn't swallow. He had cancer in the throat.
Oh.
So Kent was so, Kent would pour it into a tube that went into his stomach. He was really hurting. And two of the guys that went with me were also, been in AA for, dozens of years. And so we went to Kent. We met with him weekly for about 3 weeks, or 3 years rather. And when he passed away, his main thing, he wanted to die sober. And he did. He did. He died sober. And that was what he wanted to accomplish. And it was really good. I went to our church and I said, why don't we start an AA program here? And they said, well, we might, but why don't you check into Celebrate Recovery? And being a little resistant to new things, I thought to myself, yeah, I'll check into it, but we're going to do AA. But it wasn't that way at all. I mean, CR is wonderful. It helps all people.
Yeah.
So it's quite...
Just having somebody to talk to sometimes makes a huge difference. I think of all of the... I would not have known, believe it or not, I don't drink, and I never had the issue, and I work with kids, so literally wouldn't know an alcoholic if it came up and hit me in the head. But conversely, I work with kids all the time and understand and work a lot with suicidal programs and some of those issues. And I just think sometimes just having have somebody to talk to that has a similar understanding of what maybe the depression, anxiety, whatever it might be at the point. And I think when it comes with a spiritual component, I think it helps a lot. That's obviously an editorial note on my part, but I'm sure you guys do a lot of good work.
It's very rewarding, it's not all of a sudden you see like some big flash that happens. The person kind of unfolds as they go. We've had people come and they didn't share for the first 3 or 4 times they were there. And then they might say a little something, and then they might say a little something else. And then after a couple of years, they're like a whole new person, it feels pretty, but really I get a ton out of it myself. It's been very helpful for me personally.
Do you look at alcoholism as a disease?
Oh yeah. It's very often an inherited disease. I don't know if drugs is as much of an inherited thing as alcoholism, but no matter what we have, kind of often doesn't matter how we got it. We don't judge anybody. Whatever you got, come on in. There's no judging here.
I just think of all those people in life that sometimes get judged by people who don't know what it is. And it's, well, you can give it up if you have, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, when sometimes you can't pull yourself up by the bootstraps because you have a chemical dependency that you just can't deal with. And it's hard for somebody sometimes to understand. And I think that's where the educational part of this is something that's really important. How many folks are there that have been there for a while? Because obviously with AA, you have to kind of keep coming to meetings and being involved. Is that something that's pretty true of your program?
Yeah. And people might leave for a period of time and then come back again. Recently with this COVID thing, we kind of had to shut down for a period. So during that, we got on Zoom ourselves. And we started just having Zoom CR meetings. And then when it opened up a little bit, we said, some people can't come still, maybe for this reason or that. So if someone wanted to come to CR but couldn't, they go to Celebrate, www.celebrateonlinerecovery.com. Mondays at 7, and you'll be right there. You'll be in our meeting.
No cost?
Oh, no cost, right.
Just hopefully a participation that to be able to help.
All we're doing is trying to be there. And people appreciate, as you mentioned, just someone to talk to and someone to share. We've had people come usually people come for one particular reason. And by the time they get through, they've unloaded a few other things and discovered a few things. I discovered myself, I didn't think I was going to have this or that. One of the first things I discovered that I still felt guilty for failing in a marriage 30 years ago. And I didn't know I felt guilty.
Sure.
And then later on I find some things I was anxious about or I was codependent about. And people come for that. But like I said, just being there, I uncover different things that I think me especially, I'm a little slower to realize what I might have a problem. I mean, we're all good at saying, oh yeah, I'm not perfect. But when it gets right down to it, well, what is it that I'm not perfect about? That's right. Where it's sometimes a little harder to find.
Sometimes saying you're sorry is hard for folks because they just don't. And sometimes they can't forgive themselves. I think that's a bigger issue because they've been beating themselves up so long, sometimes not even knowing what it is that's wrong. And I think that's the other factor that plays to that. You know, a question that hits me, you're essentially Oakwood is I don't want to say it's non-denominational, it's a Christian church. But do you think that the more openness of Oakwood helps it in these kinds of programs than a more traditional, and again, I'm a guy who goes to the same old Catholic church all the time. And that's not to suggest that Catholic churches don't have great programs. They do. But you guys have I think you have a welcoming process at Oakwood that's different than most churches. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is fair. When my wife and I first visited there, we were going to check out a few churches in a new area. And we walked in and said, boy, these people are friendly. You know, it was very welcoming. And we end up joining after that. But I've had people come to CR for things that I can't talk too much detail, but things that people are often ostracized for. Yeah. And there's just no judging. You know, you're welcome here. We're all screwed up. I mean, you might have something that might be bigger than what this person has, but it's still something that needs to be addressed. So, but again, and back to the non-denominational, I think that it's true to say that all churches that have Celebrate Recovery have the same attitude. I don't think it's unique to Oakwood. Okay. I've been to other CRs, and they're quite nice, just regular people.
Well, I mention it because, you know, if you're sitting home watching this and you're on the border of not really sure where to go and what to look at, sometimes maybe that extra push, understanding that, again, all churches they do great jobs with their congregations. I'm just saying sometimes there are different kinds of approaches to congregations than others. And I for my own church, we're very open to things, but you know, we kind of want you to be Catholic. And I'm not suggesting that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a different animal than you walk into your church and it's hard to explain, but it's just so open and so, you know, accepting of things. I just think that might be an easier environment for somebody who's not sure. That's all.
Well, you mentioned an important thing, Greg, because that is, people have often told me that sitting in that parking lot, the first time they just didn't want to come in.
Yeah.
But they said as soon as they walked through the door, they went, oh, hi. Just regular people. They look like regular people. They act like regular people. Yeah.
And I say that because, again, I don't want to say one better than another. That was really my point. It's that if you're running a recovery program, as you're mentioning, and most of the churches do, you've got your heart's in the right place. I'm just talking about sometimes it's easier to go someplace where people are smiling than where they're not. That's
I appreciate the comments. Yeah, I agree.
I understand what I'm saying.
Thank you. Yeah,
I'm gonna get in trouble for the way I'm saying it. I don't really mean. You understand what I'm saying.
You're good. Thank you. Yeah.
We want the best for those folks who don't get the opportunity. So last question, is there anything I've missed on this?
No, I think you covered it real nice, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to share and get the word out to everyone in the area.
So if you have an issue, Monday at 7 o'clock, Monday nights at the church at Oakwood. And if you have any questions, you can certainly call church, and we'll put that information up above and below your name here. And Dave, I appreciate the time.
I appreciate the opportunity, Greg. Take care.
Have a great day. Thank you. I want to thank both Dave Phillips from Oakwood Community Church and Dr. Matt Outlaw for giving us good, solid information. Hopefully everybody's going to have a great weekend and stay safe. Wear those masks, and we'll see you next time.